Hi everyone, welcome to this IDA Insight Hour. We're just going to give it half a minute or so to let people come in for the session. Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to today's IDA Insight Hour. I'm Kristen Tua. I'm the Communications Manager at IDA. IDA is a network of over 2,000 employer members across the UK. Our mission is to equip employers to support all their employees impacted by domestic abuse and also to share best practice with other employers. We endeavour to bring about constructive change, leading to a society where survivors thrive and where domestic abuse is not tolerated. Today's Insight Hour is all about setting an ambitious new agenda for the new year and refresh our commitment to making work a safe place for all, no matter where you are on your domestic abuse journey. We're going to be sharing some findings from our recent member survey so that you can get an idea of what employers across the country are doing. We're also going to run through how you can make the most of your IDA membership and use our resources in your domestic abuse response. And we're going to finish with two IDA members, Transport for London, and one of our strategic partners, Sellafield, for a discussion. So we're going to be taking questions from the audience at the end of the session, so please use the Q&A box at the bottom to ask questions throughout the session. And you also have access to the chat function, which is going to be managed by one of the IDA team. And as ever, please be mindful of the impact on others and what you choose to say, either in the chat or on social media. And we really do encourage you to post on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, or Twitter from this event, and please tag us at IDA.org. We're going to be recording this Insight Hour and sharing it on our YouTube channel within the next couple of days. Now, just to finish off, we appreciate that domestic abuse is a challenging topic, so please feel free to step away from the webinar and seek support at any time. Now on to our first speaker of the day to share results from our IDA member impact survey from 2025. I have IDA CEO, Susan Bright.
Thank you very much, Kristen, and hello everybody. It's great to have our first Insight Hour of 2026. So last year we conducted a survey of our members, so thank you to everyone who participated. We have held previous surveys, one in 2017 and the second one in 2020, but IDA as a network has grown hugely since that time. So back in 2020, we had 324 members. And at the time of this survey last year, if we go back a slide, please, we were over 1,800 members. The purpose of the survey was that we really wanted to understand three things. The first, the impact of IDA membership on an organisation. The second, what sort of support do employers have in place for their employees? And thirdly, what areas of further support would IDA members like from us here at IDA? We had 229 responses, which was a 15% response rate. So that gives us a good indication of your views. So moving to the next slide, the first area we looked at was how many IDA members have a domestic abuse policy, looking at the position before they joined IDA and then the position after they joined IDA. And unsurprisingly, thank goodness, because that's why we're here, you can see here that before joining IDA, 32% of organisations had a policy, and after joining IDA, that has moved up to 65%. Moreover, if we move on to the next slide, you can see that for those organisations that don't have a specific domestic abuse policy, almost a quarter of them, a quarter of you, have one in development. 20% almost have guidance instead, and for 14%, the domestic abuse policy is included within another policy within the organisation. What we hear from victims and survivors of domestic abuse is that having a written policy or guidance is just hugely important. It's incredibly difficult to come forward and to seek support from an employer. And in order to do that, people need to know what's going to happen to them. Who do they contact? What sort of support will be available? What will happen to them after they've sought that support? So this is a really important area. Secondly, on this slide, you can see that people are using IDA resources in order to help them with that policy development. Most importantly, the IDA handbook, which is our step-by-step guide to putting in place an effective domestic abuse response. We completely rewrote and relaunched that recently. So it's a really useful resource with lots of guidance, case studies, and so on. Then Sharon's policy, which we co-created with one of our ambassadors, Sharon Livermore, which is a template policy giving people ideas of what to include. And then our guides, guides for champions, for line managers, and so on. And also importantly, our members are using input from other sources as well, vitally from colleagues, also looking at other policies, getting ideas from different places, and getting third parties to help them to write their policies. So moving on to the next slide, we also ask questions about the sort of support that our members are offering to people. So importantly, this is a very busy slide and we will share the slides with you afterwards. But this slide is looking at the sorts of support that an employer offers when somebody has come forward and disclosed that they are experiencing domestic abuse and they're seeking support from their employer. So it's different from what an employer might have in their policy, which will have ideas of the sort of support that's available. But as many of you will know, the actual support somebody needs will vary and be very individualized. But you can see here that most importantly is creating a plan of action to keep the employee safe. So something very bespoke, looking at their particular circumstances, the connection with work, and what they need to keep them safe. And then there's a lot of support around working patterns, so flexible working, changing work patterns or workloads. And then further down, you can see substantial amount of offering special paid leave, or indeed further down, unpaid leave. But there's a lot of employers using their existing support to help in this area too. So you can see references to counselling service and so on. So there's a whole range of ideas there that give organisations ideas about what other employers are doing and what you might offer in cases where your employee needs support and help. So moving on to the next slide, we also asked questions about, well, what support are members offering beyond your employees? And it's very exciting to see that many IDA members are offering that support and influence beyond their own workplace, which is something that we really, really encourage. So you can see on this slide that quite a large number of IDA members are providing support to their customers and clients impacted by domestic abuse. Now, obviously, it depends on the nature of your organisation, the services that you offer, or the products that you make. But there are a wide range of ways in which we see IDA members being able to actively look at their customers, their clients, and provide that support in different industry sectors. Secondly, you can see organisations signposting other employers to IDA membership, and then sharing their domestic abuse response with other organisations. People are also helping in the community by supporting frontline domestic abuse services with donations, skills, and partnerships. And this one I really like is asking suppliers to commit to implementing a domestic abuse response. That's a really nice way of really embedding the need for domestic abuse responses into your supply chain. I've just spotted a question in the chat about how many companies participated. We had 229 IDA members participating in the survey this time. That was a 15% response rate, and we're really grateful to everybody who did respond. I was going to say in this area, we're going to have a network event, an in-person network event in March. And this area of using your knowledge and experience to provide support and influence beyond your workplace, to customers, to suppliers, to your communities, is an area that we're going to focus on at that next in-person meeting and share some best practice and ideas with everybody. Then moving on to the final slide, there was a question about, well, what more can IDA do to support all of you? And there were a range of areas that people picked up on, but the one that you commented on the most was this first one, dealing with perpetrators. And that seems to be an area where increasingly employers are wanting more guidance, more support. And that's because it's really difficult. If you realize that you've got somebody in your workplace that is engaging in abusive behaviors, either relating to someone who's also in your workplace or not, it's an extremely difficult situation to deal with. We have got some guidance on this amongst our resources, and we have had a number of events where we've looked at it, but it is a very big area. And just want to share with you that that's something that we as an organisation are going to be focusing on, working with all of you in order to create more guidance over the coming months. Secondly was updating the domestic abuse policy. So Sharon's policy that I mentioned earlier is updated every year and goes through a legal review. That's a template policy. We've got lots of guidance and ideas. And we also have on our website connections with other policies that are out there and available, including, for example, Vodafone's toolkit. So there are all sorts of examples that you can look at to take inspiration in creating your own policy. The third area was around advocacy. So we were encouraged in two areas. One was our advocacy out to employers, really encouraging more employers to understand the prevalence of domestic abuse and their responsibility in order to support employees. So that's a key area, and that's what we do, but real encouragement from our network to do that more. And secondly, encouragement to engage in advocacy with the government, specifically to encourage government to mandate employers to have domestic abuse policies. Now, that's probably not something that every employer would want to have. It's not something that the government has picked up on yet, but we do think it's probably a direction of travel over time. Just pausing there, the government published its VOG strategy, Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, on the 18th of December last year. We as an organisation did input into that strategy, and just want a heads up that the strategy focuses on prevention, relentless pursuit of perpetrators and support, and does really encourage that whole of society response. And there are lots of actions that relate specifically to employers, which will be implemented by the government over the coming months and years. And we will be working closely to support the government and all of you in making sure those are implemented. So the fourth area, case studies and good practice. So you really wanted us to do more case studies about what employers are doing, good practice, and share those. And Kristen is on the case and creating more and more of those to share with you. And fifthly was signposting, a real encouragement to signpost employers to specific specialist areas. That's something we do. We see ourselves very much as a connector, if you like, between employers on the one hand and then specialist service providers on the other. And we'll show you our new website shortly, where we will, hopefully, that will become easier for us to do. I just wanted to pick up on one last thing, was that there were a handful of replies to the survey which said it would be really great if there was an employer helpline. Now, members of IDA can always contact us in order to ask questions, and we will support you. But there is a specific dedicated employers helpline out there. And so we wanted to signpost that now, which is the Hestia's Respond to Abuse Advice line. And you can see on there the telephone number and the email address. So just to finish up, that's a little snapshot of the findings. We will be sharing much more with our members from the survey over time. But one of the things it made us realise is that not all of our members understand the full range of the advice and guidance that we make available, or indeed all of the events that we put on. And so that led to us thinking that at the beginning of the year, we should showcase to you our resources, our tools, and our events. And so I'm going to hand over to Christina, who is going to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. So I'll now be taking you through IDA's member resources, some key tools, and some of our upcoming events. We will be starting with an introductory video, so please let us know in the chat if you have any audio issues. Unfortunately, we have had to tweak this a little bit, but hopefully it should be running smoothly. If not, there are subtitles, and we'll also share a link so that everyone who potentially might have hearing or viewing issues with this that they actually have access to this introductory video. So it's about 2 minutes long, and if Kristen can press play, please.
We spend a third of our lives at work. For many, it's a place to grow, to connect, and to thrive. But for 1 in 4 people, it might be their only respite from domestic abuse. Domestic abuse can have devastating impacts on the individual, as well as their children, families, and the wider community. It can also impact you as their employer, because no one leaves their home life entirely behind at the workplace door. People are the most important asset of any organisation. And as an employer, you have a vital role to play as part of your duty of care to your employees. Work may be the only place of respite for someone affected by domestic abuse, and supporting your employees also makes business sense. The annual cost of domestic abuse to businesses in England is currently estimated to be over £17 billion. The Employers' Initiative on Domestic Abuse is a network for employers that want to take effective action on domestic abuse. Our mission is to equip employers to support their employees affected by domestic abuse and to share best practice with other employers. IDA membership is free. It gives your organisation access to a host of resources, tools, and the opportunity to meet other engaged employers. Join our network of over 2,000 employers, collectively employing over a quarter of the UK's workforce, that are already taking action. Only through greater awareness, relationship building, and the sharing of best practice can we make systemic change. We believe that you are an important part of achieving necessary change. Join IDA today to help protect your employees impacted by abuse. Together we can create thriving workplaces where every employee feels safe and supported.
Thank you so much. So the introductory video, which hopefully you could all hear, that was explaining organisational membership of IDA, but we also wanted to highlight that we do offer individual membership for HR professionals. Our HR Charter Against Domestic Abuse is designed for HR professionals who want to make a clear commitment and gain access to our members-only area, resources, guidance, and events. If you'd like to find out more about this, you can visit our website, or potentially someone can share this in the chat. Yep, wonderful. Next slide, please. We've got a wealth of resources available on our website, with one of our standout resources being our IDA handbook, which Susan mentioned earlier was a prominent one in our member survey. The handbook provides that clear step-by-step guide to creating and implementing an effective domestic abuse response in your workplace. Alongside this, we've got lots of guides. So we've got a guide for everyone, a guide for domestic abuse champions, a language guide, and a manager's guide, which is designed to support line managers, but can also support the HR teams as well. Next slide, please. So we recently launched a new e-learning resource, which we designed specifically with small to medium-sized organisations in mind, particularly those that may not have the same internal resources as some larger employers. This e-learning is completely free for and available to all smaller organisations across the UK, whether or not they are an IDA member, and we encourage all of our members to explore the resource and also share it widely. Alongside this, Vodafone Foundation and Rise for Change are working together to provide funded training for smaller organisations who are IDA members. If you're interested in either of these, there will be links in the chat as well. All the links that we share in the chat, we will also email out as part of our Insight Hour follow-up comms. So please don't worry if you don't spot them. We're very excited to let you know that we'll be launching our new IDA website, and now I'll show you a short preview. I do want to apologise in advance. This video that I've taken is a bit of scrolling, so you might feel uncomfortable, but it's only 1.5 minutes long and I'll talk throughout. If we press play. Wonderful. So this is showing you our home page with the design. It's making sure that it's accessible, bright, easy to navigate. And then along the top, we'll see that you can access all sorts of areas of our website, from what is domestic abuse, all the way through to information about our different membership levels, including strategic partner and beacon programs. One of our favorite improvements is the resource page, where you can filter by topic, type, format, or date, or you can use key search terms. You can see here I've put in handbook. And then when you click onto the resource and go into a resource page, you'll also have a section at the bottom which spotlights other resources we think you might be, which might be linked or useful for you. So when we click on here, you can see another resource page, and all the documents and links are available on the right-hand side of the page, very clearly put there, just like in our other pages. So this is our events page, where we can easily navigate to view and register for upcoming events. And then finally, we've got our news page, our news section, where we'll be sharing updates as our recent article that Susan spoke about earlier, which is what is the government's new violence against women's and girls strategy means for employers. We also share key updates via our LinkedIn page, so if you're not following us already, we do encourage you to do so. That was a lovely sneak preview of our new website, which we will let you know once it launches. Next slide, please. A tool that many of our members find particularly useful is the Bright Sky app, which is run by Hestia. Bright Sky is available both on phones and also online, and provides practical information on how to recognise domestic abuse, respond safely, and access support. One of the most valuable features is the localised support directory, where you can input a postcode and it will bring up specialist services to that person's local area, which is brilliant. Next slide, please. We have lots of events that are coming up in 2026. One of our first ones, such as today, is our Insight Hours, which we run once every 2 months, and we focus on specific topics identified through our member feedback. At the end of today's session, you'll receive a link to our next Insight Hour in March, along with a feedback form, which I really encourage you all to complete. It really directs and shapes our future events, and we really appreciate the feedback. We'll also be hosting 2 in-person network events this year, allowing us to spend more time together and take a deeper dive into key topic areas. We also do foundation programs, which bring together up to 10 employers over 2 days, where we go through very much in depth all of our 4-phased approach in creating and implementing an effective domestic abuse response. If you do want to find out more about the foundation program, please get in touch. And over the past year, but continuing through into this year, we've been supporting organisations in leading and coming together in sector-specific roundtables, where employers can share challenges, approaches, and innovative solutions for their sector. They're really powerful events to get involved in. So again, if you would like to be involved in setting up a sector-specific roundtable, please do let us know. And then we wanted to show a fantastic free resource available to all organisations, which is AXA Group's Safe Spaces online training, which uses carefully curated videos and IDA's 3R framework to help employers recognise, respond, and refer. We're going to be hosting a live demo of this Safe Spaces training on the 20th of February for about 20 minutes, so it's not very long, but it's really useful. And the sign-up link should be in the chat just now. Some of you might remember that we also had a conference in October 2024. Seems not so long ago, but we actually will be very excited to announce that we are having our next IDA conference taking place in spring of next year in 2027. So you can just watch this space. For updates on everything that I've been covering in this, please make sure you do sign up to our newsletter if you haven't already, the Tuesday Trio. And with that, I will hand over to Kristen, our communications manager. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. And that was a great run through. And I really hope that everyone will take the chance after the session to go in and check out those resources, because again, they're free and available to all UK employers. Now I'm about to stop sharing my screen, and I would like to invite my fellow panelists, Leslie Bowen from Sellafield and Georgina Carey from Transport for London, to join me for a discussion, because as we know, employers are really, really keen to hear what everyone else is doing in this space. So I'm going to start with a question about why you decided to take action on domestic abuse for your workplace, and to briefly just outline the core pillars of your domestic abuse response and any particular successes that you've had.
Shall I go first? Yeah. Okay. So hello everybody, lovely to be here. Delighted to be part of the IDA organisation. It's really great that Sellafield have joined as a strategic partner, so we're learning lots and we're on a journey together, which is absolutely brilliant. So Sellafield's interest, so obviously domestic abuse is very visibly part of everyday life now. You know, it's no longer kind of a home-based issue. People are talking about it, you know, even programmes like Baby Reindeer bring it all to life all the time. So we took the opportunity to have a little look at the stats, have a real deep look at the local stats. We're heavily engaged with a local charity called the Freedom Project that provide counselling for those people impacted by domestic abuse. So we were very much linked into what the local stats were looking like. And we relayed those back into our organisation and said, you know, if this is a number of people who are impacted by domestic abuse, then let's have a look at what might be the impact within Sellafield. We then triage that data with, you know, things like our occupational health data, our absence data, and really try to get into the skin of what that impact might be. And to be honest, when we started looking at the stats, we were quite taken aback in terms of the business impact that it was having. We then worked with the local charity we described, and we established an employers conference which kind of brought the whole topic of domestic abuse live within the Cumbria region, and we got a lot of support on the back of that. So based on all of that, we then started to say, right, we need to do something about it. But the key to it all was us really getting a deep understanding of local national stats, linking those back into Sellafield and doing the so what question. In terms of pillars, we've kind of just starting on our journey, to be honest, but we've got 5 pillars that we're working actively on at the moment. The first one is kind of raising awareness of the topic. If we don't get that basic awareness, then, you know, we haven't really got a platform to start from. So we're doing a lot around raising awareness. We have a network of trained advocates. So we are investing heavily in those people and getting those people with the right skills so that they can help spot the signs, help signpost people to where help might be. Started to have a look at our policies and processes, and at the moment that's quite light touch, but we need to have a look at those and see whether they are supportive of anybody in need. Trying to keep ourselves abreast with best practice, and our membership with IDA is obviously a really important line on that, but we want to keep ourselves live in terms of what's going on. And the last one really links to the first one, which is the awareness building, and that's just keeping the topic absolutely live, keeping it live through our communication channels. So that's where we're starting from.
Thank you so much, Leslie. That's really, really useful. And George.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so insightful hearing all of that. And thank you for having me here. From TFL, so we were in the position in 2021, we launched or established our Ending Violence Against Women and Girls program, and we did this through listening sessions. There was research. We spoke to expertise, etc., people around the business as well, and really looked to see what we needed to do within our business to help support both our colleagues and our customers, and build on the work that we already do to keep everyone safe and secure. And we saw part of that activity was reviewing our policies to see whether it adequately deals with issues that disproportionately impact women and girls. And we obviously the gap for domestic abuse was found. We worked really hard in creating both a policy and guidance. So when we think about the pillars side of things, for the guidance itself and for the policy, actually, it was really looking at, again, to echo Leslie, the raising awareness side of things. We wanted to make sure that we had a tool that was really, really simple and clear, so that we were able to raise awareness about how to spot the signs and, what the impact of domestic abuse is, what domestic abuse is even, so people can recognise it in themselves and in others. Making sure that we had somewhere where it was really supportive signposting to external agencies and help, and recognising or making sure that people understood that we are not the experts in this, that there are specialist people that can support with that, and we will support with helping to find those. And then the flexibility. So, there's the paid time off is there, of course, but is making sure that line managers and everyone understands that there needs to be flexibility when it comes to attendance, when it comes to performance. There needs to be a level of understanding and what the impacts can be, and then making really adjustments and safe adjustments in the workplace to keep the employees safe while they're at work. Picking up on the raising awareness side of things as well, and Leslie mentioned it there as well. I mean, from the when it comes to how we carry on embedding. So we launched our policy and guidance back in 2022. So we're further ahead in the journey, but the work is still ongoing in making sure that that awareness raising is really, really key. Just because we're such a large organisation, so it's really important that people know how to spot those signs within themselves and with others.
Thank you so much, Rich. That's really helpful as well. And I like what you say about raising the awareness so that people can spot the signs in themselves, because something that we know all too well at IDA is that so many people who are experiencing domestic abuse, whether it's from a partner or an ex-partner or their wider family, they're just simply not aware that what they're experiencing is abuse, because that type of behavior has become so normalized for them within that abusive relation, however that looks. And so being able to spot the signs in yourself and also in other people is just such a useful starting point. And just as you say, I mean, domestic abuse can so often be hiding behind things that might appear like performance issues or other odd things that are going on with the employee. So just having an employer that is, domestic abuse curious and has that in the back of their minds is so, so, so important. And just the flexibility that employers can offer when they have that in mind is great as well. So it's super interesting hearing about both of your journeys. And I think a lot of people are maybe thinking about the enablers and barriers to implementing a response within their own organization and anticipating any challenges that they might encounter when they do that. So did any of you encounter any challenges with your response, either initially or now as it's ongoing, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Sellafield did quite a lot to kind of try and mitigate some of those barriers that might come up before we started. So you can imagine, nuclear license site, a lot going on, priorities are, they chop and change, but we wanted to get this topic high on the executive's radar, and we managed to do that by, as I said earlier, by bringing the stats to life and alive and getting them involved in kind of what was going on and using survivor stories and bringing it really, to the heart of what's going on. So I think because we've managed to get such a strong pull from our executive, I think a lot of our barriers have been kind of knocked away, maybe in terms of funding or getting membership with you guys or whatever it might be. That's kind of been a yes, 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 yes. We've always had that very positive support because we started there. We started getting this to be a real business issue and getting their level of support. And that's actually knocked a lot of the barriers down for us. So I'd really suggest, propose, offer to help anybody who kind of wants to start their journey. That's really what's been one of the biggest change agents for us. But in terms of barriers, I think the one that we are battling with at the moment is really just getting the work done, if you like, because there's a lot to be done. So we're relying very much on advocates, people who are interested, people who just want to make a difference, change makers type individuals. But I think that we're struggling a little bit with that because it's more in kind of the volunteering type area and doing stuff in addition to your day job. And that's the thing that we need to get the right balance with now in terms of how much do we kind of drive through normal processes versus how much do we kind of rely on people who are just passionate about the subject and want to make a difference. And that's the balance that we're kind of battling with at the moment.
Yeah, I think for the challenges when we were developing, I think the biggest challenges we were getting is making sure, obviously we had to, there were a lot of people that were involved with this. We're an operational organization as well, of course. So getting something that is simple to use for a range of people in a practical sense, that was probably a bit of a challenge for us, and really convincing. It's a hard topic. It's a hard topic as a line manager for someone to come and have a conversation about this. So it was like really managing those expectations for those line managers, for example, that you don't, on supporting them on how they can have easier conversations around it. That was, yeah. I think overcoming that as a challenge was just kept it really simple and information really accessible to everyone, and really laying that language as to really simple. The current one, I think the biggest thing, again, I'm going back to the awareness raising, the fact that we're a large operational company, is getting the information out to people that we even have a policy. There are so many people out there who are working for us who probably don't even know we have policy and management guidance to, again, keep things as simple as possible and give that response. So we make use of the events that can help amplify it, like the 16 days of activism, for example, is a really good time for us to start amplifying our messages and send things out and go out on road shows and have those face-to-face conversations. What I found is that the conversation is what matters the most. You can have a fantastic written document, but unless you're actually talking to individuals about what's in it and what is available to people, it just doesn't come to life properly. So just ongoing, keep plugging away at that. I think it's definitely year on year you can see the increase. And just, yeah, I think I think that will always be a challenge, especially for a larger company.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And as a communications person myself, I can certainly speak to the fact that sometimes you need to get a little bit creative with keeping up that steady drumbeat of awareness raising and comms about domestic abuse, just to keep it on the agenda for the long term. And I'll just pinpoint that our previous Insight Hour was about exactly that. So if you go to our YouTube library, we've got the full recording of our Insight Hour where we talk about communicating about domestic abuse and keeping it on the agenda for the long term. So please do check that out if you haven't had a chance to already. We've also got lots of internal comms resources that speak to that. But just as you're saying, Leslie, I think having that initial senior leadership support is so important for an organization. And if your organization is maybe struggling with that, for anyone who's listening, in our resource library, we have a business case template. We've got one for large organizations and one for small organizations as well. So please do use those if you find that senior leadership are dragging their feet a bit on this. Because as you say, it's all about embedding that response for the long term so that it doesn't just rest with one person, but that you can give it that longevity. So perhaps the solution for many organizations is to create a working group with members from lots of different internal teams, including perhaps communications, also IT in cases of tech abuse is always quite useful, so that you've got that really embedding the response for the long term. And so I think everyone would be quite curious to hear what the feedback has been so far on you having this domestic abuse workplace response. And, feel free to talk about both internally amongst your employees, but also external feedback to the degree that you've had that.
I mean, I think the response at Sellafield has been really, really excellent. We set up a working group with a number of work streams. Very early days, only a couple of meetings in. I'm not saying it's mature, but we've got a really good cross-representation of people on that, whether it's occupational health, operations, comms, IT. Haven't got the trade unions on there yet, but that's kind of the next step. So I think that whole kind of big network of people who are energized by the topic and want to do something different is receiving really positive feedback. So I think that's good for us. And I mentioned the conference that we did earlier with the local charity. That raised a lot of interest with local MPs, with the Police and Crime Commissioner, people who can really influence the agenda on domestic abuse. So we've maintained those networks really, really well. And, Sellafield is now kind of seen locally as somebody who's not getting it right in all cases, but taking a real interest in this and wanting to be better than it currently is, which is having a really good feedback from kind of local stakeholders. It's really positive. We've also had some of our local supply chain reaching out to us to say, well, we're about to start. Where do we start? Can you help us with that? So we're starting to see a little bit of a local kind of impact. we are very, very embryonic in our, I'm not suggesting we are great at this stuff. We're starting on our journey, but we've definitely got a level of interest and impetus behind us to kind of move on. Really, really excellent.
Yeah, from a TfL standpoint, and most of our feedback is from an internal side of things. So really, really great feedback from those who make use of the policy and the guidance and support that's on offer. We've had people, women, mainly women so far, and actually I'll come back to that when it comes to the challenge so far. But the women who I've spoken with who have been supported with fleeing their abuser, we've had. I remember a couple of months into the launch, after the launch of the policy and the guidance, we put everything onto a centralized SharePoint, basically, so that you've got the policy, you've got the guidance, you've got our e-learning training, and we also did a launch webinar where we had a woman who had some lived experience and her line manager who had supported her through a time of crisis, a really dangerous time in her life. And this was before we had a policy in place, and it was supported by a wonderful woman, Lucy Whitaker. So she runs Alpha Vesta. So they focus on providing training for free training for employers. So it was a really good launch webinar. We put the recording of that webinar onto the SharePoint. So lots of different things on there, how to have caring conversations, etc. So it was about a couple of months after the policy and the SharePoint was launched, I got an email from a colleague who messaged me saying that he had an issue that he needed to talk to me about in relation to domestic abuse. I didn't see the email until about 1:30 in the afternoon, so I called him straight away on Teams. And he said straight away, so George, I'm fine. I've seen it. I've got the SharePoint page open. I'm halfway through the webinar. I've read the guidance. I've read the policy. I'm fine. I can deal with it. So having something for me of that self-serve where a line manager who's probably been told something that's really scary for them to be able to go somewhere and actually feel a sense of calm, that they're able to handle a situation, which is something they've probably never handled before, was fantastic feedback. That was like just the ultimate satisfaction for me, is like, okay, fine. And I didn't hear back from him, so he was fine. Externally, we're trying to plug away at making it really clear that TfL has got this response. You know, we are a caring organisation. We took some advice from you, Kristin, from the we did a LinkedIn post this month actually, just to highlight that that this is an issue for both men and women. That is a challenge as well, that we want to make sure that we're making sure that this response is for everyone, and that men need to come forward for that level of support as well. I've sort of lost my train of thought now. I could talk and talk.
No,
Great.
it's so good. No, it's so good. I'm just sitting there saying yes, yes, yes to everything that you're saying. And I really like what you said as well about that self-serve aspect of the response, because, every single time that IDA comes to an organization and we talk about this and we talk about domestic abuse, we get disclosures. So we know that it happens everywhere. But as an employer, even though you have a response in place, you might never know that people have actually accessed it and used it, because they might not always disclose to you in person or come to you. They might just use the resources that you've made available and go away and use that for themselves. But that is still a win. So when it comes to tracking impact within your organizations, even if you don't track individual disclosures that you've received, you can do slightly more indirect things like going into, as you said, that SharePoint site that you have internally and track how many views is it getting and things like that. Because just as you both said, this is really about creating that culture of trust and that support. And I think what we hear from victim survivors that we speak to is that the loyalty that they feel towards employers who have helped them through this difficult time and when they've been experiencing abuse, that loyalty really is second to none. And we do know that younger employees especially are really looking at lots of sort of social value aspects of their workplace. What kind of employee benefits do you offer? So seeing that your company offers a domestic abuse response is really positive for someone to see. And for anyone, just on the external feedback there, for anyone who's worried about coming public with the fact that, we have a domestic abuse response in our organization, fret not. all the employers that we've ever spoken to have had a really positive response, because some companies can be a little bit hesitant to do maybe a press release that they've joined IDA, for example, or that they've launched a policy, because they might worry that, oh, if we go public and talk about this, someone might think that this is a problem unique to our organization. But that's really not our experience at all. We have a long list of positive PR that employers have received for going public about their response. So if anyone is interested in that list, do ping us because we can email it over to you. My next question to you both is, how has IDA membership helped you implement your domestic abuse response? And are there any particular resources that you have found especially useful?
I think the foundation course would stand out for me. So that it, obviously you know what it is, but for everybody on the call, it's 2 full days where which are really well spaced between them, where you kind of go back to basics in terms of where do you start, and we didn't know where to start, so that was kind of a perfect starting point for us. And then the build, a few weeks later, after you've had time to internalize it and kind of work through and take it to the next level, I thought was a really excellent starting point for us. That's also obviously grounded by the handbook. So, I have a copy of the handbook, a hard copy of the handbook sitting at the end of my desk. And so that's really useful. And for me, I think the other thing is the relationship with IDA. It's kind of quite frequently you get information. We have some webinars like this. It's kind of a constant thing. So it can go off your desk and you can be doing other things. And then all of a sudden it's back there again. You go, oh, actually, I need to get on with that. So I think that whole kind of drumbeat of connectivity that you get from IDA is really, really excellent at keeping the topic live. But for me, the standout was the foundation programme.
Yeah, I have to agree, Leslie, that foundation program was really good. And that even this is where Leslie and I met for the first time on that program. And I think it was great being amongst people who are at completely different points of their journey. And even though we launched our policy 4 years ago, we learned so much when it comes to the embedding side of things. And I really look at IDA as like a critical friend in a sense, in like, coming to with current challenges on how we, further give some support to our employees and what that might look like. And the comms advice is great. Like Kristen, you're so right. I mean, we had our chief people officer. And I should say, actually, all of our senior leadership team are very much bought into this and consider domestic abuse to be a workplace issue, and are really keen to fly the flag for us. It's just making sure that we get to them at the right time. So Fiona put a LinkedIn post out a couple of weeks ago, and I was really pleased to see the amount of reposts. So reposts from other like larger entities. So yeah, I think actually just sharing, giving us the confidence to actually get out there a little bit more, and have that critical friend and support network in a sense, and then access to all of the resources. I'm probably not as good as I should be at going into the resource pack. I didn't even realize there was a domestic champion guide. So we do have like organic domestic abuse champions within our organisation who have become advocates of it. Usually it's people who have got lived experience, but it was the policy and the guidance that allows people to actually go and advocate within the business a lot more. So they've become domestic abuse champions. So I'll definitely be making sure we've looked at that guide.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is one of the great reasons why we host these Insight Hours is, we're learning things live on air. That's really amazing to hear. And I would just like to wrap up the discussion before we move into the audience Q&A by asking you both, if you have one top tip, very quick one, if you have one top tip for an employer that's just about to start their domestic abuse journey, what would you say?
Take the time to get executive senior sponsorship, and then you get all of the air cover you need to do what you need to do.
For me, I've probably said the word quite a few times already, but just keep it really simple. We basically we didn't do anything new for our policy and guidance. All the support that's available was already available within TfL. The only thing we added on was some extra leave for those who disclose. So just make sure that it's as simple as possible.
Really, really good advice from you both. And thank you for a great discussion. I really enjoyed that. And now we're moving into the audience Q&A part. And a question that I see has come up quite a bit, both in the Q&A box and in the chat, was, do you have any advice about how to get that buy-in from senior leaders, from managers, from HR, from the people who you really need on board to roll this out? Because they say it can be hard to get the impact at that level, and situations of domestic abuse are quite rightly private and confidential to that person. So if you have any advice on securing senior leadership support, what would that be?
I think it's as I said to the very first question that we talked about, it's bringing the stats to life for your particular organization and making it real. Because you're right, it is, quietly managed. It might go through welfare, it might go through HR, it might go through occupational health, it might not go anywhere, but bringing the national stats to life, the 1 in 4 stats to life, bringing the impact on children, the impact on perpetrators, bringing that to life locally, and then saying, so if this is actually the environment that we're in, then for an organisation of 11,000 people, which is what Sellafield is, then this actually is going on with us, and we need to put a level of support in. So I think it absolutely just go with the national stats and the local stats and make them live for your organisation, replay them back.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's all really. Oh, sorry, George.
I was just going to say, to build on that, yeah, says from our we already had the buy-in at the stage, but it was the lived experience, I think, was really, if you can actually show, as well as the stats, but that story, real story, if even if from your organization, if you have availability for that and there is someone who's willing to do that, that really, when you can talk to the hearts and minds, it makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And that's something that we see a lot at IDA as well. And you might not have people within your organizations that feel comfortable coming forward before you've launched a response, because ideally you want the response in place before you get the disclosures. But IDA, we have a group of wonderful ambassadors, men and women from very diverse backgrounds, who can also speak to their lived experience if that's ever something that people are interested in. I'm just going to quickly comment on something that I see in the chat, which is that people have been asking for things like policy reviews and help to assess the workplace response. And that's also something that IDA offers as part of our consultancy services. So do ping us a message in the chat or email support@ida.org.uk if you would like to reach out to us directly. There's a contact form on the website as well. I'm going to pick up on a question from Laura, who asks, and panelists, I can speak to this one as well. Do you foresee the legal duties around workplace sexual harassment deprioritizing policy development and awareness raising for domestic abuse? Or do you see senior leadership commitment to a zero tolerance approach to all forms of violence against women and girls and domestic abuse? I'm happy to start out on that one, if that's all right with both of you, because I think that we're currently in a very, very interesting situation where we have momentum, political momentum from above in a way that we didn't have before. So you've got the Employment Rights Bill, which deals with sexual harassment in the workplace. And now you've also got the Vogue strategy coming from the government. And the government makes it explicit in that strategy and in their action plan that employers are expected to be a part of the whole of society response to domestic abuse. There's an explicit recommendation to join IDA. There's an explicit recommendation to map the response you currently have in place and to implement a policy and a response if you don't already have that. So I think, Laura, that we're lucky that we've really got momentum now to create lots of synergies in these different spaces and make it a holistic workplace response about making work safe for anyone. I don't know if you would like to add to that, Leslie or George.
I think that the strategy, when I was reading through that strategy, it was fantastic actually, and we were able to actually strengthen our arguments for certain things that we wanted to make sure, like with mandation, for example, with the work-related sexual harassment policy. We launched our guidance the year in 2024, in October 2024. But I guess because we had the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls program, we had put ourselves in really good stead in doing the research and everything to get to that point. But we haven't mandated that training. It's really difficult to mandate training within TFL for obvious reasons. There's just so much. So that strategy in itself is a way of helping to strengthen that level of mandation. From TFL's point of view, absolutely not. They're both just as there's no priority over one or the other. it's just as strong for it. But I guess we did quite a lot of work in that space. So now for both of those things, it's just about embedding.
No, that's super useful. I'll take one more question. Oh yeah, sorry, Leslie, did you have
No,
any?
I was just going to, I was just really going to layer on that and say that, anything that allows you to improve, put another layer on the requirement to do something different is good. So, and this is just another push to kind of get us to where we need to be. So positive.
No, definitely, I agree. And I'll take one more question before we go to our little summary, which is also from Laura. When working on creating policies and support materials, do you work with partners? Do you work with your trade unions or staff networks and victim survivors themselves?
All of the above. Absolutely.
All of the above.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think for those who, they might not be all sectors that work directly with trade unions, but things like having that survivor informed piece is really important. And that also sits at the heart of all of IDA's work. So all of our resources are informed directly by victim survivors. They're reviewed by victim survivors so that you've always got their safety and well-being as your number one priority. That's always super important. So without further ado, that is a wrap on this Insight Hour. So thank you so much to both of our guest speakers for sharing your knowledge and your experience. We're so grateful for your time and for the insights that you've provided. To everyone attending, please do use our over 50 resources, some of which are linked in the chat, and keep an eye out for that new website launch, which is going to be great, I think. And we'll share the recording of today's session in our YouTube library, so do keep an eye out for that. Follow us on LinkedIn and Blue Sky to get the latest updates. And I'm going to pop it up on our screen here because we've got another Insight Hour coming up in March, which is going to be, as my colleague mentioned, about when domestic abuse is unfortunately fatal. And so it's going to be about domestic abuse related suicides. So please, everyone, take some time to register for that upcoming webinar, but also to perhaps decompress for a few minutes if you need that after the session. And there is a QR code up in the corner there because we would really, really love to hear your feedback on the session. So please take 2 minutes to share, or there's also a link in the chat box. And that's that for us. We'll see you next time. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.